We're going to be talking about what to actually eat in perimenopause and menopause and beyond that will actually help you to lose weight. So the question is, what are the best foods to eat when you are trying to lose belly fat, improve your energy, and just feel better in your own body? That is the question that I'm going to be answering tonight. What are the actual foods that we want to eat? What do we actually eat? Because last week I talked about why belly fat after 40 is a hormonal problem and not a too many calories problem. So now I get the question, well, then if it's not so much a calorie problem and it's not a willpower problem, then what the heck am I supposed to eat? So that's what I'm going to go into tonight. Now, we're not going to be talking about calorie counting, tracking, measuring, giving up your favorite foods. Nothing like that, but I am going to give you a formula that is going to help you actually put a meal together that's going to support weight loss, support your hormones, and support insulin sensitivity. And we'll get into all of that in just a minute. For those who don't know me, I am a registered dietitian. My name is Lucy, and I've been a dietitian for 18 years. I am 46 and right smack dab in the middle of perimenopause myself. So I completely get it. I know what you're going through. I also run a business, have 3 kids, we homeschool, and I have a lot on my plate. So I also understand the busyness and intensity of life and how do we make this all work while living our busy lives. So I would love to know, though, for anyone here that wants to drop in the chat, in the comments, I would love to know what you had for breakfast this morning if you feel like sharing. So, and if you're watching the replay, I would love for you to think about what was it that you had this morning for breakfast. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. So I want to take a moment to look at the big picture of, this whole idea of what should I be eating. And I want you to think about the fact, I actually want you to forget about portion control and calorie counting. Now that might be hard because you've been hearing it probably your entire life, and you probably have been told by doctors, they love to say, well, you need to just go home and lose weight. You need to just go home and try harder, eat less, work out more, move your body more, and burn off the calories. But I actually want you to take that thinking and I want you to forget about it, at least for the moment. Your plate is not a math problem. We don't need to calculate the calories of everything you eat. That actually isn't that helpful to knowing what you need to eat. And I'll show you an easier way to do it in just a minute. Every single meal that you eat, every food you eat, every snack that you eat will either spike your blood sugar and trigger fat storage, or it's going to stabilize your blood sugar and trigger fat burning and support your hormones. So we want one or the other. Obviously, we want the fat burning side of things. And the difference, whether or not you're in fat burning or fat storage mode, is actually what is on your plate. And it's not just the calories, the number of calories on your plate. It's the types of foods, the combination. I mean, if you had a pile of French fries on your plate versus a pile of carrots on your plate or a pile of chicken on your plate, even if they're the same number of calories, they're going to be processed in your body completely differently. And that's going to either store fat or burn fat. So now, what does a hormone balancing plate look like? Here's the formula. Number 1, protein at every meal. You might be sick of hearing about protein. However, it's the foundation of this whole thing. So we have to kind of get used to thinking about protein. It's going to take up about a quarter of your plate. So when I think of my plate, I think of having a chunk of my plate, a quarter of my plate, having some kind of protein on it. And I'm thinking like chicken or beef or a pork chop or meatballs, steak, fish, salmon, shrimp. So there are lots and lots of different protein options that you could put into that little kind of quarter of your plate. This is an area where most women are under eating. And if you're under eating protein, if you're not getting enough at your meals, then you're going to have a really hard time balancing your hormones, balancing your blood sugar, and even like creating those hormones that you need to create. You're going to have a hard time feeling full and satisfied. Now, going back to the breakfast that a lot of people eat on a regular basis, it might be avocado toast, it might be oats, it might be cereal, it might be a bagel, it might be a muffin, it might be just a cup of coffee. All of those things, whether or not they're healthy or not, it doesn't matter. All of those things are lacking protein. We want to see around 25 to 30, maybe 35 grams of protein at each meal. And we want to see that on a regular basis, especially for breakfast. We want to start the day with protein. All right, awesome. So we've got Kathy. Let me move that out of the way. Cottage cheese, raspberry. Cottage cheese. With raspberries, I'm guessing. Hard-boiled eggs and coffee with some milk and whatever leftover veggies. Amazing. So you're getting protein. Now, sometimes we have to figure out a way to either boost it up or have some kind of a protein snack afterwards. 2 eggs is going to get you 12 grams of protein, but we still have a ways to go to get to the 30 grams that is our goal. Does not have to be in that same meal. It can be a snack like an hour later that has a lot of protein in it. The next part of the formula of this hormone balancing plate is to get non-starchy vegetables. This is actually what we want to see the most of on our plate. Preferably like half your plate as non-starchy vegetables. It can be peppers, onions, zucchini, asparagus, broccoli, carrots. There's just an endless number of types of veggies. And Carla's breakfast is 2 eggs with pico or pico de gallo and Canadian bacon. Wonderful. So you've got the 12 grams of protein from the eggs plus a little bit of protein from the Canadian bacon. Well, it might be a lot, actually. The Canadian bacon I buy is pretty thick. So you might be hitting your 25 to 30 grams of protein. So awesome. Now, the next thing we would want to add to the eggs and the Canadian bacon is maybe more vegetables, but the pico is going to give you a bunch. So maybe that's enough. Maybe we would add a little bit more. And Kathy already has the veggies on her plate. So you guys both have veggies on your plate, which is a huge plus. That's amazing. The next part of the formula is the healthy fat. So you could kind of think of it as like a thumb-sized bit of healthy fat. That's like a very general kind of guideline, but it might look like a half an avocado or a quarter of an avocado even. That's totally fine. It might look like some olives on your plate. It might look like the yolks from the eggs. So that's actually going to be the healthy fat for this meal for these 2 breakfasts that I just read. So it could be maybe you're having leftovers and you're going to drizzle some olive oil on your vegetables or a little bit of butter on your vegetables. Or if you are having oats, you could add protein powder, you could add an egg on the side, and you could add some grass-fed butter to your oats. So that healthy fat is so important because estrogen, progesterone, and cortisol are all made from fat. We actually need to have healthy fats in our diet in order to have a balanced metabolism. It also helps us to feel more full, which is going to help avoid sugar cravings. So let's see. I think I got through everything there in that category. And then the last category of this formula are the smart or healthy carbs. Now, the carbs piece is the timing is very important. You don't want to wake up and just have carbs like a bowl of oats or a bowl of cereal or a bagel that doesn't have anything on it. That's a big dose of carbs, and that's what's going to spike blood sugar. You're going to end up with storage of belly fat. So it's still important to get carbs in, if I have eggs without some carbs with it, I get hungry afterwards and I don't feel very satisfied. So I like to have maybe a piece of fruit with my eggs, or maybe some leftover sweet potatoes with my eggs, or maybe it's just a lot of vegetables because they will add up in carbs eventually. So we want to see a combination. Now, that's breakfast that we're kind of talking about. What about lunch and dinner? Same thing, same formula. We want a quarter of the plate to be protein. We want half the plate to be some kind of vegetable, non-starchy vegetables, and a quarter of the plate to be probably some kind of carb. That could be oats. It could be sweet potato. It could be even white potato or wild rice or quinoa. These are all great carb sources. All right. So now we do not want to just have carbs plain. That's really key in the timing. We don't want to start off our day with a lot of carbs, or we're going to start the blood sugar roller coaster right from the beginning, and it's not going to stop. You're going to end up dealing with it all day long. You're going to end up with energy crashes and sugar crashes and cravings. Now, I would love to know from you guys, does this look different than how you're currently building your meals? And, if you're watching the replay, just think about that answer in your head. Is this different than what your breakfast, lunch, and dinner look like? Now, for the meals that are in the chat here, you're getting the protein, you're getting the fat, you're getting the veggies, and the carbs, some of the carbs, like the cottage cheese. That's going to have both protein and carbs. And so actually add that protein to the eggs that you had as well. So you got 12 grams of protein from the eggs, plus you're getting protein from the cottage cheese. So you're probably in the 20s, which is perfect. So you're also getting carbs from the cottage cheese. So that's another way to get healthy carbs. Okay, so those are very balanced meals, and you're hitting all the points. All right. So now the next thing is, how much protein do you actually need? I know that question came up in some of the questions that were posted. So this is a little bit nuanced. It's individual, depends on the person, male or female, how big they're, like how much they weigh, what are their goals. There's so many different, how tall they are. So many different components, how active they are. But a very general guideline is going to be about 30 grams per meal, plus maybe a snack. So maybe we're somewhere around 100 grams a day, all the way up to 130 grams a day might be the range that you're looking for in order to balance hormones, reduce carb cravings, improve insulin sensitivity, lose weight, lose belly fat. So it's a little bit of a general number, but that's a great place to start. Okay, so some of the reasons why we want to have that protein is because you're losing muscle mass as you age. It's just a normal part of our aging process, and we want to counteract that. We want to preserve the muscle mass that we have, and we want a chance to build more muscle. And the way we do that is through protein. We have to have that. It also helps your metabolism. So if you're feeling like you have a slow metabolism, or you're feeling like your metabolism is broken, try eating more protein and see what happens. It also, the more protein you eat, actually the more calories you will burn. So just by digesting it. So that's another like little hack of protein. But protein stabilizes blood sugar, and unstable blood sugar is one of the biggest problems that women in perimenopause and menopause are dealing with when they are trying to lose weight. So let's see, general recommendations. Now, it might feel like a lot at first to think about eating 100 grams of protein a day. So you don't need to start there. What I want you to do is start where you're at and then add a little bit each day, or whenever you feel you can start adding. So if you're at 60 grams a day, totally fine. Maybe we could bump that up a little bit by adding a protein snack, or maybe adding a little bit more protein to your meals, and we'll sneak it in. It doesn't have to look perfect, and it doesn't have to be all of a sudden overnight hitting those goals. So let's see. So yogurt with protein powder If you add it to the yogurt, you're going to get somewhere around 30 to 35 grams. So that could be a breakfast. A chicken breast, like a 5-ounce chicken breast, is going to be around 35 grams. So usually that looks like a palm and a half or a deck and a half of cards. So if you think of a deck of cards, 1.5 of those is going to give you about the size protein that you need. All right. Let's skip down to the next section. And before I move on, I want you to think about, for those that are watching the replay, think about how much protein do you feel like you're getting in a day? Try and calculate that number by just thinking about, or track it for a day, just to get an idea, or throw it into ChatGPT will give you an idea of how much protein you're getting. But that's a good number to know. And not obsess over, but just to know where you're at. Do you have a ways to go, or are you kind of on target? Next section is carbs. So the truth about carbs in perimenopause, are they our enemy? Like, should we be avoiding them? Should we be as close to keto as possible? Should we be cutting carbs so that we can lose weight? Here's where it gets really tricky when we're going through hormone changes. And that is that if we reduce carbs so much, we end up putting stress on our body. We end up with more carb and sugar cravings. So it tends to backfire. I've worked with many women, and anytime we try to do keto, it backfires. The body just, it does not feel good in their body. They also feel very restricted. So we want there to be enough carbs so that you don't feel restricted, that you do get enough vegetables and fiber, that you do feel satiated and satisfied so that you avoid sugar cravings, but not so many that you're spiking your blood sugar. So it's not so much about the number of grams of carbs, but more so the timing of it. We want to combine carbs with other foods like proteins, fats, and fiber, and not eat carbs alone or naked. So we don't want naked carbs. We want our carbs to be dressed. So that means we're dressing them with proteins, healthy fats, or fiber from like vegetables. So that's the real thing about carbs. They are definitely not the enemy. Now, the type of carbs also matters too. If we're going to potato chips or cookies or sugar, sweets, even breads and pastas, those can really spike the blood sugar. It can be very hard to balance those, even if you're eating protein and healthy fats with it. Although it is better to do that, it's still going to cause some kind of a blood sugar rise, which means belly fat storage. So we want to just be mindful of the portions when we are having those things. We can still have them. We just want to do it mindfully. Okay, so let's see if there's anything on here. I did want to point out that as we go through perimenopause and beyond, and as estrogen fluctuates and then really drops, we lose that protection that we had from estrogen. So if you are in perimenopause or you're postmenopause, completely done, then we have to think about the fact that we don't have the estrogen there anymore to protect our insulin sensitivity. And so we become more insulin resistant just naturally. That's just the way our body, that's what happens as our body ages. So in order to counteract that, we have to make sure we're getting the protein, the fiber, and the healthy fats, and not eating our carbs plain or naked. So again, best carbs for perimenopause and menopause: sweet potatoes, oats, rice, or wild rice is one of the better ones. Legumes can work too, especially lentils. They also have protein built into them, so that's a bonus. Fruit. Yes. I don't know if I mentioned fruit as a great carb source yet, but it absolutely is. So you can add a piece of fruit to your breakfast with your eggs so that you have a little bit of balance. Fruit has fiber and micronutrients and macronutrients. It's got phytochemicals. It's got antioxidants. There's lots of great things about fruit, and there's no need to fear fruit. Now, whole fruit is much better than dried fruit or fruit juices because those are very concentrated in sugar. So we want to stick to the whole fruit, or chopped, frozen fruit. All of those are great. Root vegetables are another great way to get um, more carbs in a natural way. So beets, parsnips, carrots, um, winter squashes are another great thing. So those are going to have a little bit more carbs than like zucchini. All right. Those are all. And I would love for those that are here tonight, or if you're watching the replay, think about the question. But for those that are here, you can drop it in the chat. What is one carb that you've been most afraid to eat? This comes up in conversation quite a bit when I'm in session with women. They might be afraid to eat bananas or carrots. That's one that I hear a lot, that they're afraid to eat, or they might be afraid to eat potatoes, like white potatoes. So I would love to know from you, what are you afraid of eating when it comes to carbs? Okay, so last section, let's tie this all together and talk about real meals that actually work. Okay, so for breakfast, it might be some kind of eggs, whether they're scrambled, fried, made into a quiche, an omelet, however you like, with vegetables and maybe an avocado and some berries. That would be a balanced meal. Maybe it's Greek yogurt with some protein powder and some walnuts and some blueberries. Or maybe it is a protein smoothie. I have had these many occasions when I'm on the run. I will throw in some fruit, I'll throw in some spinach, I'll throw in some protein powder, some almond nut butter, and some coconut milk, and some water, and blend that all up. Now, what about lunch? It might be a big salad with some protein and some hummus and maybe a bunch of vegetables. And did I mention chicken or some kind of protein like tuna fish? And then maybe some feta cheese and maybe some olive oil and vinegar for a healthy dressing. So lots of things you can do with a big salad. Maybe lunch is leftovers from the night before, and we'll get into some dinner ideas. Maybe it's turkey and avocado lettuce wraps, and there might be some veggie sticks alongside of it, and maybe a banana to go with it to give you some carbs there. Some dinner ideas might be sheet pan shrimp. That's one of my favorites. And it might be some wild rice on the side and a bunch of vegetables. Or maybe it's chicken thighs with roasted sweet potato and broccoli. Or maybe it's a taco bowl. So that's super popular in my house. There's probably going to be rice. You could even have some black beans. I would pick either rice or black beans. And then salsa, avocado, greens. There's so many ways to do a taco bowl and keep it really balanced. You can do salmon, asparagus, and maybe some wild rice with that one. So, or quinoa, lots of different ideas. All right. I think we've got to all of those. So here's what I want you to take away from tonight. It is not about having a diet. It's not about counting calories. It's not about being perfect. It's not about measuring and weighing your food. It's not about having rules. It's about building a plate that is nourishing and delicious, colorful, and satisfying and satiating. Something that's going to actually nourish your body and give you the nutrients that you need. When we do that, we balance hormones, we balance blood sugar, we even support our nervous system by doing that. And that leads to weight loss. It leads to your body being in balance and feeling safe enough to release the weight. So many things happen, so many amazing benefits. People end up sleeping better, have better skin, have better bowel movements and digestion. There's so many benefits to creating a balanced plate. So I hope this was helpful. If you need help building a balanced plate and creating a plan for yourself that's more individualized than what I've been talking about tonight, then there's going to be a link underneath this video, and it's going to be a free 15-minute call that you can book with me, and we can chat about what a balanced plate would look like for you specifically and what your goals are, so that we can make sure we're designing a plate that helps you reach your goals. So thank you so much for listening. Before I go, I am going to answer a few questions. So some more questions that came in was when to eat and how often. So this is something I hear a lot, like, well, what about intermittent fasting? And should I have 6 small meals or 3 big ones or 2 meals? So it really depends on each person. And the key is a couple different things to think about when you're trying to decide what to eat, when, how much, all that is do you notice sugar cravings? Because if you're noticing sugar cravings or carb cravings, then that might mean you're underfueled. And if you're only having 2 meals a day, then you might end up being underfueled and it may lead to energy crashes or sugar cravings. So that's something to think about. When women are doing really long intermittent fasting overnight, that's what can sometimes happen, is that we're just not eating enough. We're not able to get the protein in because the eating window is too small. So sometimes we have to make it a little bigger. There's no reason that we need to eat small meals frequently throughout the day. So that recommendation is kind of old and outdated. But there are some times when that still works, because if you're working with making changes when you have been for so long eating a certain way, maybe dieting for a really long time, then your body might not be ready to eat 30 grams of protein in one meal. That might be really hard to get all the nutrients in one meal, and that's okay. We split it up. That's when we have multiple meals throughout the day so that you can hit your goals. I hope that answers that question. The next question was, are carbs the enemy? I think I answered that already. The next question was the percentage of carbs, protein, and fat. So that is a question that is hard to answer without having somebody having all the details in front of me. So in general, we're looking for more of a it's actually better to look at your formula like that we went over today, rather than thinking about percentages and thinking about hitting that 30 grams per meal or 100 to 130 grams of protein in a day. That usually works a little better, and maybe getting to like 80 grams of fat in a day, and then adjusting the carbs depending on your hunger level and cravings and your movement level and your goals. So there's a lot involved. People do say, okay, protein is like 25 to 35% of your calories. Carbs is 20 to 35%, which is a big range. So it's kind of hard to say. Fats, you could say, is anywhere between 35 and 50%. Those were all percentages. It's tricky to go by percentages, and it's easier to go by the formula of the plate and how your body feels and responds, and hitting those grams instead of the percentages. And then when somebody had asked percentages of the macronutrients in products, so like if we're looking at a package, the question is, well, then what percentages should we be looking at? That's also pretty tricky. A lot of packaged food does not have protein in it. So unless it's like a protein powder or some kind of a protein bar that they have put protein in, or it's a package of jerky. So, or maybe it's a package of yogurt. So that's a good example. But basically, we're looking more at the ingredient list. Like, what is in the food, in the package? What did they put in there? We want to watch out for any hidden ingredients, that is sugar, preservatives, artificial colorings and flavorings that are just going to create more inflammation in the body. So we want to still stick to, in an ideal world, if that's the only food we're having is that one package, then we want the carbs and the protein to be close to the same. We don't want the carbs to be way higher than the protein, because that's going to end up giving you a sugar spike, blood sugar spike. All right, best time to eat carbs, that would be later in the day. So I prefer to have carbs with each meal, and for most people that works really well. The key is that you're not eating them plain. So we still can have carbs in the morning. I still need carbs in the morning, but I'm not going to eat them plain. So now I totally misspoke when I said later in the day. I didn't quite mean that. What I meant was that we want them with each meal. And if it's too late in the day, like right before bed, that's going to cause blood sugar roller coaster overnight and can cause you to end up waking up and having a disturbed night of sleep. So we want to kind of spread them out, but we don't want too many right before we go to sleep. So sometimes we're having that cookie or those chips or pretzels or ice cream right before bed, and that can cause a problem. And it doesn't mean you can't have them. It just means that we need to maybe move it up a little earlier or combine them with proteins and fats. And then last, I think that was actually the final question. So my final takeaway is it's not about eating less and moving more. It's about nourishing your body and sticking to that framework so that you have balanced, nourishing food that is going to help you. All right. That's everything. So, ladies, I would love to know, what questions do you have? What comments do you have about all the things that I just presented? And I'm going to stop talking and let you guys talk.